Video 2 this weekend, so this is talking about new nationalism and na 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 with the flags and so on. Go USA, USA, USA. The new nationalism, arguably the most important byproduct that came out of the war is that we are now fully committed to being the United States of America and go US, right? And so we're going to rebuild Washington, D.C., we're going to expand our army and have a great military, and it's all going to be USA, USA. So we have the American system. So the American system is going to be how can we make our country better? Because we are still basically, we're trading with Britain, but we are still mostly agricultural. We're working on our manufacturing, we are working on our industry, excuse me, but we're still mostly raw materials and sending them to England, and then they're going to sell stuff back to us. And we got to figure out how to stop that, because the British are taking advantage of us economically. They are flooding our markets with cheap goods, and there's nothing we can do about it. With regard to our manufacturing, because we haven't got the ball rolling quite yet. We're going to get there, but not quite yet. So one of the things that Congress decides to do is pass a tariff. So a tariff, 20 to 25% taxes on imports. The idea here is if we tax Britain and what they're sending to us, then Britain's going to have to pay extra money for that. And one, we're going to generate some money, and two, their stuff is going to be priced higher than made in America stuff, and so that should help us out. Well, that's the game plan, right? That's the argument for tariffs, for taxes in other countries. It helps the American products. That's the argument. Let's see. The American system have a strong banking system that's going to provide credit. That's a very federalist idea. Keep government land priced high to generate revenue. Okay, sure. A protective tariff, and build a network of roads. All right, all good stuff for America. So this program is going to be pushed by Henry Clay. Henry Clay is the guy here in the middle here, and he's going to go America. It's going to be pushed by Henry Clay and by Daniel Webster. But you think, well, that all sounds good, but there were some leading men here that are very anti these policies. They thought that they were unconstitutional, in fact. So we're going to have Andrew Jackson and Van Buren and James Polk and James Buchanan and Franklin Pierce, who are all going to be presidents, kind of back to back. Who are anti the American system because, again, they think some of the tenets in there are unconstitutional. And some of these things are going to be taken away through the Congress and through executive orders, et cetera, et cetera. But arguably the most important thing that came out of it was the road system, the Cumberland Road. So the Cumberland Road is going to start there on the right side, in Cumberland, Maryland. And it's going to, the game plan is that they want to build a road that goes from point A, Cumberland, Maryland, all the way to St. Louis, point B. So they're going to start working on this, and they're going to work on this for many years. They're going to come across Ohio. They're going to come across Indiana. They're going to get to Vandalia, Illinois, and then we're going to run into a financial issue, and they're going to run out of money. Now, eventually, yes, we do have roads that connect Illinois to St. Louis, which is only like 90 miles or something that they didn't get quite done. And they did extend the road back the other way from Cumberland, Maryland, back to Baltimore, Maryland, but they're using toll roads, and that's how they kind of did that. But anyway, the national road, and in fact, in 2002, they proclaimed this the National Historical Society claimed it the National Road, et cetera, and the people of Cumberland, Maryland, made a huge party, and they have a big gazebo, and et cetera out there. So I go drive on the National Road. There you go. President Monroe, number 5, and so again, this is the another Virginian. So we've had 4 out of the first 5 presidents are coming from Virginia, but he's going to be the last one from Virginia in this grouping here. So let's see, the last election, which Federalists ran a candidate because the Federalists are going to go away. And what do we know about Monroe? He fought in the Revolution, member of the Virginia Assembly, he was Continental Congress, Minister of France, and he was in that group that helped negotiate for Louisiana Purchase. We call his first term the era, well, his terms, I suppose, the era of good feelings, because we had just not lost a war. See what I did there? We had just not lost a war, and we were not going to get in any other wars in the next couple of years, I suppose, and everything was looking up. Everything was looking up. So we call this the era of good feelings. Make America great. And then you get, 200 years later, you get Make America Great Again. But this is Make America Great. And so it reflects our sense of nationalism and our victory, meaning that we didn't lose, right? We didn't lose in the War of 1812 was a tie, but you know how people can spin it one way or the other. The Federalists have all gone away, and except for John Marshall, we'll talk about him in a second, but we have a one-party system, the Democratic Republicans, under Jefferson, we call them the Whigs now, and so it's crazy stuff. Something of a misnomer, however, the era of good feelings, because it's not going to last very long, and there were troubles. For example, in 1819, we're going to have a panic. So a panic is when people, the short version of a panic for us is that when people run to a bank demanding their savings and the bank doesn't have the money. That causes a panic, obviously, because think to yourself, if you were like, you had $100 in the bank and you're like, and you go up to the bank, you're like, I'd like my $100, please. And they say, nah, we don't actually have that. And your response is like, but you're the bank. You're the bank. And the bank goes, I know, we just don't have it. So that causes a panic, all right? So now you're like, well, why would a bank do that? Right, here we go. Let's see, bankruptcies, bank failures, unemployment, panic of 1819. This is our first depression. We're going to have several of them in U.S. history. And so, in fact, in United States history, we're going to have this cycle of boom and bust. We're going to get a whole bunch of people really rich, and then it's all going to fall apart. And they're going to have a lot of people get rich, and it's all going to fall apart. We're going to do this, all the way up to the current year. So, causes the panic. 4 causes here. The first one is deflation. So, Britain has found out that even though American cotton is pretty good cotton, Indian cotton. Indian cotton, right? There's not Egyptian cotton. Those nice cotton sheets. And it's cheaper over there because, one, those are colonies of Britain, and we're not. So we're having them pay premium prices with the tariffs, and they're not paying the premium prices. And so our cotton market is going to take a nosedive. The second one is over-speculation of land. So to speculate on land means that you buy land from the bank. And a lot of these times is that you only put down like 10% of the money. So the land is worth $100. You tell the bank, I tell you what, I'll buy the land. I'm going to give you $10, and then as soon as the land starts generating profit, then I'll pay you back the $90 that I owe you. And a lot of the banks will do this. So it's called speculation. I'm speculating that I can make money from the land. The problem is if something were to happen and the bank suddenly says, hey, you need to pay me that extra $90 that you owe, and you don't have it because you haven't earned it from the land yet, that is going to be a problem. And so that's called over-speculation. The banks are lending money to people that they're not going to be able to get their money back from. We have a trade deficit, and a trade deficit means that we owe more than they owe us. And so our species, so specie means hard cash money, like coins. Our hard, cold cash coin money is being put on ships and sent to Europe. Well, you only have X amount of gold, right? You only have X amount of silver. And once it's gone, it's gone. So the problem here is if the national bank is running out of specie. So the national bank says, hey, state banks, remember how we got you out of debt? Well, you owe us some stuff, so we're going to ask you to give us some specie because we're running out of it because we're paying Europe. And the state banks are like, okay, we understand, here's what we have, but we don't have enough, so we're going to go ahead and call in the specie from all the people that we loaned money to who speculated on land, and oh, you see this is a problem. Because we don't have enough coin out there. And when we don't have enough coin out there, now the banks have to, the state banks are going to have to do something. So how do you get money? Well, you sell the people's land that owed you. So you foreclose on their houses, you foreclose on their land, and now you get somebody who's rich to come in and buy the land for cheap, and now the banks make the money, but the people who owe the, yeah, it's bad. And this causes a panic. We do have a lot of cheap land out there in the West. We're working on highway systems, and we'll get to this later. We're going to work on, eliminating the Native Americans going west. Let's see, the Land Act of 1820. Gosh, can you imagine an acre? 1 acre is $1, $1.20. 1 acre in some places, $1.20. So you could buy a square mile for $640. Goodness, more than that, $650. Goodness, that's crazy. No, more than that, $700. Come on, do the math. Between 1791 and 1819, again, Louisiana Purchase, and so we're going to add states. We're going to add, looks like 9 other states, including Louisiana, Indiana, Mississippi, Illinois, Alabama, and others in the north, in the Northwest Territory up there. And here's the game plan, right? I mean, Congress kind of thought this through. They are going to, they're going to add states alternately. Every other, they're going to add a state. One from the south, one from the north, one from the south, one from the north. Specifically slave states. 1 slave state, 1 free state, 1 slave state, 1 free state. Why? Well, this makes sense to you if you're thinking this through, because they don't ever want to have a huge imbalance between slave states or free states, because then various states can pass rules that other states are not going to like. So the West, even though they have a whole bunch of states out there, they don't have a big population. And so we know how that works with the Great Compromise, that yes, every state gets 2 votes in the Senate, but every state also gets the votes in the House based on your population, and the West is pretty weak at this point. So again, at this point, we have 11 states each. We have a total of 22, so 11 states in the north, 11 states in the south. And this makes everybody, I was going to say makes everybody happy, or makes everybody equally unhappy, because in the Senate, the slave states have the exact same amount of votes as the northern states. Now, in the House, again, based on population, the House has more people, because they have New York, they have Baltimore, they have Boston, they have et cetera, and the South has Charleston. There you go. Let's see, Missouri. So Missouri is going to come into this, and it's going to be an issue. So the first state from Louisiana Purchase to seek admission, and Representative James Talmadge, there's this picture, he's going to come up with an interesting argument. He's going to say, look, during the argument, or during the Congress's deliberations to have Missouri join us as a state, he says, hey, how about this? All slaves in Missouri, because Missouri was a slave state, slave territory. All slaves in the Missouri Territory, once they become a state, once they become 25, they're free. Well, that's an interesting idea. So when you're young, you're a slave, and then when you turn 25, you are manumitted, you are freed. That's an interesting argument. And Talmadge says, and Missouri can no longer import any slaves from any other states. Okay. Yes, right? And in the House, that amendment passed. Why? Because it's North dominated. So the free states are like, yes, let's do this. And in the Senate, it did not pass. It did not get the majority votes. Because why? Well, the Senate was equal between the slave states and the North states, so it was a 50-50 tie, and a 50-50 tie means it does not pass. So, what do we do with Missouri? Well, Henry Clay, he's from Kentucky, and he's going to become known as the Great Compromiser. That's going to be his moniker. The Great Compromiser. And so one of his first compromises here is the Missouri Compromise, 1820. And so here's how it's going to go down. Missouri is going to be allowed to come in as a slave state. Well, at this point, there are no new North states. And so the South is like, yes, because now we'll have one extra or two extra votes in the Senate and we'll be able to pass all this legislation. And Clay says, but here's what we're going to do. Massachusetts, Boston and Salem, the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and they actually extended all the way up to Canada at one point. Well, they still own the territory of Maine. And so Clay said, well, if we bring in Missouri, which would be a slave state, we're going to bring in Maine and make it its own state instead of Massachusetts North. We're going to make it Maine, the state of Maine. So now that's one North state, one South state, and so everything remains equal. And then the compromise says we're going to draw a line. And that line is going to be set at the north of the 3630 latitude. So 3630 latitude, and Clay says any state that we create north of that is going to be a free state. Any state that we create south of that is going to be a slave state. So, and then of course the irony there is that Missouri is actually north of that line, but it's so. There you go. And so that line, the 3630 line, is the line between Oklahoma and Kansas, and it would have extended. Well, I mean, it technically extends all the way out, but then things are going to happen in American history that we don't follow that rule anymore. You'll see. All right. So the Missouri Compromise. Maine comes in. We add Missouri. Missouri's a free state, and we draw a line that says north and south. All right. New topic, John Marshall. So John Marshall, remember, he's the one who tricked everybody in Marbury versus Madison to get the power of judicial review. Well, John Marshall, who was put on the court by a Federalist, right? And all the Federalists have now basically all died off. Adams and Hamilton, well, Hamilton was shot, but they've all kind of died off. But he's still here. And why is he still here? Because the Supreme Court justices and all federal judges are elected for life. They're appointed for life. Well, at least under terms of good behavior. So if you live till you're 600, you're still going to be on the court, as long as you're not committing any crimes. And he's still here, and so he's still making policy as the Chief Justice. And so here, a couple of very famous cases. The most important case up here for us right now is McCulloch versus Maryland. So this is a bank case. The short version here is that the state of Maryland wants to tax the National Bank. So the National Bank, which is located, in Maryland, state of Maryland and Baltimore, the state of Maryland wants to tax the National Bank. And so the National Bank's like, no, because the state can't tax the national. That's not how that works. And so the bank owner, McCulloch, is going to sue. Well, they're all going to sue each other, but so we have McCulloch, the bank owner, the national bank owner, and then the president of the bank, and then the state of Maryland. And that's going to go all the way up, obviously, to the Supreme Court. And so then John Marshall is going to rule, and he's going to have two important rulings here. The first one says necessary and proper can be expanded. So the words necessary. Congress can determine things which are necessary and proper to run the government, kind of like making a bank. And the second thing that he puts in here is, and this is important, this establishes federalism. More so, like hardline federalism. The idea that if a national versus a state, whether it's national law versus a state law, if they disagree, then the national law takes precedence. So if the national law says you can do it and the state law says you can't do it, well, then you're able to do it. And then vice versa. If the states say, yeah, you can do whatever you want with XYZ, and the national law says, no, you cannot do that, then you are not allowed to do that. And you say, okay, well, that makes sense, but we're still arguing this in 2020, right? Because the national law says marijuana is a class whatever drug, and you are not allowed to have marijuana, and you're sitting here naming states right now that you're allowed to have marijuana, Alaska and Oregon and Washington and Colorado, et cetera, and there you go. And so this is an argument, and so at some point the Supreme Court has to deal with this. And the same idea, not too terribly long ago, we had the issue of gay marriage. States like Texas and Oklahoma said, over our dead body, and then other states were like, yes, absolutely, we want to allow that. We do want to allow that. And the Supreme Court ultimately had to come down and make a decision that said, okay, the national rule is it's okay to do that. And so the incredibly red, the conservative states like Texas and Oklahoma have to go, okay, well, you're the national government, and so even though our rules say no, but your rules say yes, so your rules apply. So we're still arguing this even today. And let's see, I could probably come up with about 10 or 15 different things that McCulloch versus Maryland applies to right now. But we'll do that next year in government class. It'll be fun. A couple of other court cases. Gibbons versus Ogden involved taxi ferries, boat taxis, going across from New York to New Jersey, and who can control putting taxes on the taxis. And so ultimately, woo! All right, use your words. Use your words. Okay. Ultimately, John Marshall is going to say, no, New York, New Jersey, stop. The only people who can negotiate or interpose stuff on when it comes to interstate commerce between the state commerce is the National Congress. So stop doing that. Let's see. Fletcher versus Pegg, Dartmouth College versus Woodward. Talk about contracts and the invalidity, inviolableness. I'm making up words now. If you sign a contract, that's a contract. So again, government class. You'll enjoy it. I'm going to fix my slide here. La, 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 la. So Louisiana Purchase, again, remember Louisiana was everything where it rained and it funneled down into New Orleans, that was Louisiana. That's kind of the original definition. But now we're going to start drawing lines. This is where it stops. This is no longer the United States, this is now Canada. And so we're in the Angle, which means British. The British American Convention, the Anglo-American Convention of 1818, we're going to draw lines, and we're going to talk about how we're going to be able to share the fisheries up there in Newfoundland and up there by Maine, and then we're going to jointly occupy Oregon territory. All right. Let's talk about the South. So in the South, Florida, and Florida has become this haven for the evil Native Americans that are coming into Georgia and raiding the Georgian towns and carrying off the women and stealing our cattle, and I'm making stuff up at this point. But anyway, the Native Americans are then fleeing down into Florida and hiding in Florida. So Andrew Jackson, and some other guys, but Andrew Jackson getting the top billing here, he's going to be told to go down there and handle that situation. So he's going to come down into Florida and, again, it's not military history, but he's going to make some decisions that are very unpopular with the Native Americans who are dead, and he's going to become known very, very famously for fighting the Native Americans down here. So the Creeks and the Seminoles, etc., and he's going to fight down in the swamps, and he's going to burn city or towns. And here's the deal. Spain, which currently owns Florida, and Spain sees the handwriting on the wall. They see that Jackson may not stop. I mean, he may go all the way down to the Florida Keys at this point, and he may just militarily take over Florida. So Spain decides, you know what? Because we're probably going to lose it anyway, we might as well make a profit on it now, and they decide to sell us Florida. So we call this the Adams-Onis Treaty. The Purchase of Florida in 1819, the Adams-Onis Treaty, named after John Quincy Adams, our Secretary of State, and Senior Onis, can't think of his first name, Senior Onis from Spain, and they're going to, we're going to buy Florida, or we're going to take Florida, and then we're going to draw, we're going to get Florida, and we're going to draw the southern boundary of Louisiana Purchase. So we drew the northern boundary where it stops at Canada, and now we're drawing the southern boundary. And you see that it's defined by, in some places, like the Red River, so the southern border from Oklahoma to Texas, and then the western border of Oklahoma as it shoots up to Colorado and then comes across. And so that line will define the northern border of what Utah and Nevada and California. We also agree in the Adams-Onis Treaty to abandon our claims to Texas because, frankly, who wants Texas? I mean, Texas, really. And it's going to solidify it solidifies our border. All right, so we're giving up Texas. Man, if only. All right, just three more slides. The Monroe Doctrine. So from the last video, we talked about how at the end of the War of 1812, we basically made a commitment. We're not going to get involved with Europe. We're not going to get involved. We're not going over there. We're not doing it. Even if they come crashing down, we're not going to get involved. And we're going to do a pretty good job of staying out of Europe. But then there's the flip side. So the flip side is we don't want them over here in our business either. So Congress is going to pass the Monroe Doctrine. And so the Monroe Doctrine basically says this: hey, Europe, we appreciate everything that you've done. I'm paraphrasing. We appreciate everything that you've done over the years, the past 200 years. Spain and France and Britain, and we appreciate everything that you kind of come over here, you've kind of set everything up and wonderful. But we're going to ask you to now stay out of our business. And we're going to ask you nicely at first, but please note that we're kind of serious about this, so stay out of the Western Hemisphere. No new colonizations. If you're already over here, then you can still interact with, but nothing new. And a lot of the South American countries who are like, man, this is great because Europe's not going to be in our business. Yay! And then some of the South American countries are like, wait, what? So that means who is going to get in our business? I wonder who that's going to be. Oh wait, no, I don't wonder. I know. The U.S. would not interfere with Europe if you keep your noses out of our business over here. So we're going to draw the line. A lot of famous political cartoons. There's Uncle Sam standing there in his military uniform and saying, "Hey, that pond, this little pond, that's the Atlantic Ocean," and he says, "Over my dead body, are you coming over here?" And here's Britain and Spain and France and Portugal and Germany or Prussia, as the case may be, and they're going, but, and notice behind Uncle Sam we've got Mexico and El Salvador and Guatemala, etc., etc. So, and they're standing behind Uncle Sam. All right, last slide. The effects of the Monroe Doctrine. I like to tell you that, wow, it was very effective, and the Europeans were like, oh man, the United States, they're so great and they're so wonderful, and we don't want to get in their business at all. Okay, no. I mean, it was pretty much unenforceable, right? How are we going to stop people from going down to Argentina? No, you can't go to Argentina. I mean, what are we going to do? We're going to put up a 5,000-mile blockade? No, it's not going to happen. Now the British are kind of happy about the Monroe Doctrine because they're going to go, oh, that means that France can't get involved and Spain can't get involved. Although, as British people, we can totally still get involved, right? Because, everybody speaks American, well, English, the case may be. So, right, cool. See how this works or how it doesn't work? Let's see. difficult to enforce, and really there was no diplomatic effect. I mean, it didn't really affect anything in the world other than the United States going, I dare you to come over here. There's no big effect in the world for about 70 years until the 1890s, and then we're going to have a situation with Cuba and Spain, and we're going to get involved there. Okay, all right, so that's it. All right, that's this week. And next week is, well, I guess we'll see what happens next week. Oh, the 30th. Oh, Andrew Jackson. Oh, I'm being excited. All right, good times. All right, be good. I'll see you on the flip side. Oh, this is the flip side. I'll see you later. Be good.